Hi, so just I suppose a little video might become a big kind of video, um, duration wise, but I haven't really been feeling inspired so much, and I've been sort of busy uh, with, oh god, yeah, with like work stuff and everything like that. But this is kind of a thing that's been on and off on my mind, off and on. Sorry about the noise outside. I practically live in a fucking junction, so, and it's a terrace house, so every 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 dickhead neighbour's noise kind of carries into it, through the rooms. But this is about, and it kind of pains me to say it because I love Tarantino as a director, and he's a kind of, I guess he's like kind of, in a way, a more hippified, more in control, much less self-destructive Sam Peckinpah, who was just a complete nightmare to work with. But he got shit done basically, and you know, people people managed to deliver and work with him and all the rest of it. Tenuously, but with he has kind of mad charisma in a way, which I like, and the creative impulse, which I can relate to. It's just getting it off the ground, kind of thing. But I'm gonna have to say that as much as I like alternate history kind of ideas, Tarantino for me is a bit hit and miss with alternate history. Now it plays out, and um, how there's always got to be some sort of the good guy save the day kind of scenario. Um, Now this is about two films that I well, one I comfort watch and one that I sort of roll my eyes at. In terms of people kind of glazing over it. One is Inglorious Bastards, and the other is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which I've watched bits and bits. Maybe I need to, in order to back up my claims, or opinions, I need to maybe force myself to watch it. I've seen bits and bits, and to be honest, like when posters were out for newly out for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I wasn't kind of impressed. And there was another YouTuber that kind of complained about this too, through like a full video. I may or may not put that video in the description, but owing to my shared kind of opinion is that Margot Robbie as Sharon Tate looks to me nothing like her. They just, I mean, Margot Robbie's still kind of popular now, but in the kind of more versatile casting thing. Like there's a new film out with her and like Steve Carell or somebody like that. I can't remember who the male half of the movie is. I saw the poster on a bus while I was out walking earlier today. But it's like it's like, I don't know, Hollywood. I don't know if you could call Quentin Tarantino Hollywood. I mean, he's not of that Hollywood mentality, but maybe it is a Hollywood production. It doesn't feel like Hollywood. His stuff feels more like in the newer version of old Hollywood, which you know stuff like with like Western stuff and you know samurai kind of Akira Kurosawa kind of feel to it, so I can let that slide. It kind of doesn't feel like I'm watching a very much for profit. Just throw anybody in there that's vaguely similar, or if at all, and they just attempt to pass. Like kind of, and this goes into the more with Martin Scorsese. Love the man as a director and the storyteller, but there's certain people you think, do they have to be in every production? As it gets to a point where it's like it's sort of the guy doesn't match the guy. I can even kind of say this to a degree about Goodfellas, especially the main, the lead, Henry Hill. Even the real life Henry Hill joked that Ray Liotta was too, kind of too, sort of a bit too charming and pretty boyish in the face in comparison to him. But he did like that they stayed true to the way that he fell off the deep end with the drugs. But like stuff like and this is probably not unpopular, but much as I like seeing De Niro in Scorsese's productions, he kind of, and this is the same guy who criticizes the MCU for being basically, the Disney World or the theme park world of Hollywood movies, but then he goes and does approves CGI kind of stuff for pushing 80. Robert De Niro is supposed to be like 35 in one of the earlier flashbacks in The Irishman. Just, it's like, was it really that hard to? I mean, I know you've got to pay for like casting and extra funding and everything like that, but you could do it. Was it really that hard to find like some, if not a relative, then someone who was at least 30 years, at least 20 to 30 years younger that could pull that off? The shopkeeper scene, that kind of thing, and then I kind of just, as I watched it, I kept getting bothered by the barely concealed liver. I think they were the liver spots. They didn't look like liver spots, but for all I know, because Frank Sheeran was half Irish, half Swedish, they could have been freckles. I mean, I've got loads of freckles. God knows where they come from. That's supposed to be like a pigment clash thing from some, from like some ancestor. But who knows? But yeah, that bothered me. But back to Well, my first point was going to be originally about Inglourious Bastards, but it's I flipped them because I've started talking about how people were sucking off Once Upon a Time in Hollywood when it was newly released, and even now, kind of to a degree. But the Sharon Tate thing, it's like Margot Robbie was the sort of blonde it girl because she was also tall and Australian. I mean, yeah. I mean, you could kind of. I mean, I guess you could say that for the Harley Quinn thing as well. But I actually liked her as Harley Quinn. That's probably a weird opinion, but the first two was also just a bit of a hashtag insert kind of moment, whatever, extra mini rant. the rest of the film kind of annoyed me, mainly because everyone was a bit zany. Deadshot was all right. Rick Flag was quite good too, but like Killer Croc, nah, he hates himself generally. There was one Batman comic where he did go to live like underground in a sewer network with people who were also, sort of freakish looking. Um, but yeah, the alternate history thing. I mean, as sad as the as awful as the Sharon Tate, Manson thing was, fiasco was. It's like, it happened, and then these two seemingly random ass guys happened to stop it. I mean, I guess I like the intent that the Tate murders were, and her friends were seemingly like a awful random thing, but they've been planning it for ages, and all of a sudden, you get basically a 55-year-old alcoholic stuntman who somehow completely bodies Bruce Lee in a fight, and then you have a guy, who's sort of all right with firearms and knows how to operate a flamethrower. Were they World War II veterans, or maybe? Yeah, I'm thinking Brad Pitt was a World War II kind of veteran, early Korean War veteran, and maybe so. Well, DiCaprio was probably more of a late Korean War veteran and early Vietnam kind of, veteran. So maybe that on the side, but it's like it seemed a bit ridiculous, and it's like, yeah, and as for the second one, Inglorious Bastards, or Bastards. That's funnier, actually. The title's funnier. It's not about censor. Sometimes it's like censorship works, like how bleeping swear words is always, just kind of it's almost instinctively funny, like how I always find Family Guy and American Dad funnier when they have the bleep swear words, because it's almost like comes seemingly out of nowhere. But yeah, about Inglourious Bastards. I mean, I liked everything. I did, but the ending scene always bothers me. Like, it goes to the fact of, when you compare the whole, and the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood with Sharon Tate being saved, and then you have the whole theatre massacre thing in Nazi occupied France, and and basically it's like an allied German and mostly Americans come to save the day, and a machine gun all of them to death, except for Christoph Waltz, Hans Lander, who most likely didn't exist. Maybe being a bit of a dumb Captain Obvious kind of person here, but yeah, of course Hitler has to bite it. He's like the first one who gets him and Goebbels are like the first people to bite it I think they're in the front row. But Hitler goes out way too quickly. Like, I remember years ago discussing a book that my dad might have read years ago about an alternative history thing that depicts the kind of alternative fall of the Untergang, or whatever the bunker. Whatever the bunker the last of the Nazis and Hitler were hiding in, where there's it's almost kind of well-known fact that Hitler was definitely afraid of Stalin and the Soviet Union, because I mean there's a good reason that we won the war. Well, the Allies won the war thanks to the Americans, but also, as awful and devious as they were to certain races, like kind of like what the Nazis did with people, or their attitudes, the Russians or the Soviets. It was probably it was a good thing, tactic and situation wise, that the Soviet Union was on our side. And then I think you had some of the Italians switching over towards the end too, which is how you get the kind of prisoners of war, and some Germans did too, because there was also the alternative. There were the other. My dad, the military expert, would explain better than I did, but you had you had the SS forces, and then you had just this plain old German that didn't want to submit. Can't remember if Erwin Rommel was one of them, or he was a Nazi with like their kind of moral honor code, kind of worked for Hitler, but that's as far as he wanted to take it. It's like, well, I don't really agree with your policies, kind of thing. Wanted to make the country better, but that's as far as he went, kind of idea wise. But what was I saying? Hitler. Yeah. I mean, yeah. It kind of goes into real history. I hate that he killed himself, and that's an easy way out. It might seem kind of cliche, but it is. He was dying anyway, so either follow the kind of, what would have been good is that if he followed the kind of fate that happened in the book that I can't remember the name of, because it was so long ago since I kind of discussed it or had it recommended to me, where Stalin ends up successfully capturing Hitler and keeping him for the rest of his life, because that's the kind of thing Stalin probably would do. He was a nutter. He was a sadistic nutter, probably even more so than Hitler in a way. Hitler without the Parkinson's was probably even more reasonable than Stalin when he was younger. I have this theory that Stalin had dementia kind of last 10, 15 years of his life, and he was already a paranoid egotist anyway. And I think he probably had syphilis as well, because he liked to sleep around. So did Hitler in World War One. I think Hitler was a health freak, and I was discussing this with my dad as well. The big, military historian, all but profession. There's the whole theory of him having, almost confirmed thing of him having a French son that was conceived in World War One, and he probably got syphilis or some kind of gonorrhea. Probably syphilis later on, or some nerve thing that maybe he had a successful operation, but maybe it was a bit too late, and that owed to him developing Parkinson's, because it's all about your nerves and your synapses and all that awful stuff that, kind of like Lewy body dementia with, Robin Williams. Not saying he had syphilis, but it's like there's that much damage done that there was just continuous neurodegeneration, and he thought he probably started crapping himself about the health stuff, and he had like physicians around him all the time, about what he should eat and like all that's healthy stuff. Like he became vegetarian, ate celery all the time, drank carrot juice or whatever. But I think it's the whole Hitler was too much of a lad, so then it affected his health, and then he started dying slowly. So I think Hitler, the Glorious links to the obviously links to the goes impact goes. It follows what I'm saying about the Inglourious Bastards thing being a bit unsatisfying. It's like, oh, the good guys kill Hitler once again. I think there's been like numerous alternative things where Hitler's just, flat out executing whatever. But it's like it's just it would have been more satisfying in that, and also real world history would have been that he just here's how I see it. Because I think the Russians stormed Berlin, completely wrecked it. But I think some allies were there. I think some of them. I think some Americans were there. So maybe, have maybe one or two alternative scenarios. Have the Russians capture Hitler or kill him. Yeah, say they try to capture him, and they it goes tits up, and Hitler ends up dying. Technically, by proxy of their hand, and Stalin wants. Yeah, let's just say it's one theory, one big theory instead. Actually, one big alternative outcome thing. Let's say, and then Stalin. Say for some reason Stalin shows up, because I don't think he showed up. A lot of the time he couldn't be asked, didn't get off his fat ass about stuff. Metaphorically fat ass, because he was never fat, I don't think. Not that you could tell, anyway, because he always wore big trench coats and stuff, and a hat, and had a moustache to make himself look hard and tough, like his namesake, Stalin, Steel, Man of Steel, in Russian. But let's say that he was there, and the American forces, they arrive maybe in time to kind of make a compromise with Stalin. Something like, I think Goebbels would have been dead anyway, because he took the cyanide pill. That was like one of the first things he did. He was like the first to go, along with his wife and kids. They all took cyanide pills. Eva Braun took cyanide, and then Hitler shot himself. So, actually, and then have the I guess the Americans and the Soviets have a compromise where the rest the rest of one half of Hitler's lackeys go to under kind of, let's say, Russian slaves. Let's say the Russians acquire them as slaves. A handful of them go to work in some gulag somewhere, probably in Siberia. And then when that's done, maybe some of them run away to, somewhere in Poland that was somehow not occupied by the Nazis. Because not all of Poland was Nazi or Soviet occupied or whatever. So get them to bugger off into some obscure village somewhere, and the Americans can keep the rest of the Nazis in intermittent camps as well, / prisoner of war camps. And when they've done their service, done their time, have them handed over to Germany, to the German authorities during Nuremberg, and then some of them can go and be offered a deal where they serve the rest of their life in like a UK prison, like what happened with some of the actual Nazi senator, whatever they called them, like commander, kit chief, co-chief kind of people. I don't really know the terminology, but also, yeah, actually, it changed my mind a little bit, and then I'm actually going to talk about the second scenario, and that's have the whole thing with the Russians storming Berlin, and with some of the Americans alongside or whatever, and some of the Allied forces, because a few forces would have been there, a few country forces would have been there, So let's say that Stalin's troops are about to capture Hitler and bring him back to Moscow for Stalin to do what he will with him, and the Allies stop him. Let's say, the Americans, the USA, the UK, and who else was there? I'm going to say the Pearls, but they would have ignored the Pearls, so that doesn't matter, because Stalin hated the Pearls probably even more than Hitler did, for some reason. So he would have just either ignored them or sabotaged something in there, against them, or whatever would have happened there. Discredited them anyway. So, the Italians might have been there. So let's say hypothetically the Italians were there, the Americans are there, and Blighty was there as well, Great Britain. And they basically agree a long plea deal that happens over the course of 3 years. Because they reckon that Hitler, his middle conspiracy theorists and historians worked out that Hitler might have had about 5-ish years left in him, had he not killed himself. So let's say the process and the legalities go on for 3-ish years, and Hitler's in a really bad way, but he's kept under the safety of the let's say court systems of various allied nations. So first, or there's like a deal. First, there's the anti-Nazi kind of legal peoples. Hence why Nuremberg was a thing, because the people would have still been pro-Nazi. I mean, they were just finished, and people are pro-Nazi even now. It's a thing that'll never die, unfortunately. But let's say that he's part of the Nuremberg trials, and they can get some stuff out of him, but either out of defiance or out of just feebleness, because he's terminally ill at this point and got 2-ish more years, if that, left in him, that he spends the rest of his life in a in like a prison hospital. Let's say they just put him in a complete dump of a place, but he achieves care of some kind. So they just leave him to die in, you know, and yeah, because I would say maybe send him back home or to an estate that he had in the mountains, some castle estate in somewhere in Germany. But yeah, having been monitored, and maybe someone can, like a biographer, can get him to, in the last months of his life, get him to confess in some kind of second autobiography thing, because Mein Kampf was his actual autobiography, where it was still, before he had the shakes, basically, before he had Parkinson's. But yeah, I really believe that, yeah, the kind of, yeah, the Tarantino thing with the bad guys always have to go full bore and win and explosions and machine guns and all the. I mean, it's kind of funny. It's almost over the top, and Murica, to the point where it's funny, but it's kind of like you look at it and you think it's kind of it's a bit like there's some dissatisfaction to it. If you're a history nerd like I am, and well, hello, name of my channel. So yeah, yeah. So basically, in terms of those two films I mentioned, and mostly it became mostly about Inglourious Basterds, mostly like 85% of it, let's say, where someone's just feels the need to do a scenario where Hitler is not only did the Allies, mostly the Americans and some other people, mostly the Americans, cut off the head of the snake, but they do it far too quickly. It's like he's the first to buy it in the theatre, and after about 2 shots, Goebbels might suffer slightly more. And I'm not against that, but it's like Hitler. Either way, Hitler. If you can argue that there's some kind of universal cosmic constant that Hitler must always die, or whatever, in timelines, in theoretical timelines and movie timelines and book timelines. Maybe not book, because there's that book I mentioned that I can't remember the name of, that my dad talked to me about, where Stalin gets him and makes him suffer because he's it has to him being a sick fuck, and that's why in the movie The Hunter Gang with the Bruno Ganz, it's partly why he was so desperate and was so afraid. It's like he wanted to just basically wipe the Russians off the face of the earth because he was afraid of what Stalin would do to him. He was just that afraid of him. He was like that. He was like out of every other ally, he was like a like a devil coming to collect his soul, or some kind of Baba Yaga thing, which is a woman, but it's it's a demonic, horrible thing that takes you eventually. But yeah, basically, yeah. Tarantino, with his two popular films that I mentioned, is hit and miss with alternate history, and Hitler, in all scenarios, should have stayed alive to suffer, to face, and most importantly, face actual retribution for the awful stuff he did. Maybe the Germans would have executed him if the Allies agreed to hang him over, or let him be tried in Germany, or let's say that he does time like some of the high-ranking Nazi officials, where he does time for the rest of his life in a prison in England, and he just succumbs to his illness eventually. Yeah, let's just have that, and he can confess, and that would have been interesting. I mean, there was eventually like a biography of his life and all the unusual, contradicting stuff, but maybe in this case, like when they eventually got a Wikipedia entry of him, for example, that details of his life wouldn't have been so contradictory in parts. As opposed to his ancestry stuff. He probably might have been more truthful, seeing as he had nothing to lose at that point. Maybe still would have lied through his teeth at certain points, but that's selective stuff to where you cope. You fake sense stuff where you cope, like details of his past. Like the theories of him being partly black or very much mostly implied to be Jewish, possibly. Being the grandson, the bastard grandson of a wealthy Jewish family with a mansion and all the rest of that. So, and there's all that. So yeah, Hitler took the easy way out. He got the easy way out in Inglourious Basterds, and he took the easy way out in real life. Just blew his brains out. What was left of him. But it would have been more satisfying. It's more satisfying. Fictional or real life, it would be and would have been more satisfying of an account and conclusion, whatever, that he remained alive to basically face, up to his crimes, basically starting World War II. I mean, he did. Interesting time, but for how it ended and how he ended, it was just kind of bittersweet, kind of awful in a way. I mean, maybe the Japanese would have kept fighting. Either way, that's that awful stuff at the end with the bombings. There's always losses in war, kind of thing. But all the same, Hitler started it, so basically he should have been made to face the full responsibility of what he did. Yeah, so that kind of segued into something else. Sort of. It is related. So, yeah. Let me know what you think. Don't know really yet what I'm going to title this, but, you'll see the title. But anyway, yeah, this is History Boy signing off, and I really should get out of the bath because I'm starting to look... Well, my toes are starting to look... sort of like the dates I had for an afternoon snack earlier, so late afternoon. So yeah, before I run out of the recording time, which is a full 52 minutes for this this time, Samsung devices pick and choose how much think it's to do with how much data you're using and also space, maybe. But yeah, I kind of managed to force myself to be asked to get an opportunity to record, and of course, I'm going to do my fun facts thing, and I'm going to run out of battery soon, so I better charge my phone, and I'll see you uh, tomorrow with my 4 fun facts, which are every Friday, so yeah, stay tuned for that. Peace.